Hey everyone, my name's Joel, and this is Airlines by 40.
Come and fly away with me. Don't you be afraid, everything will change. You and I jumping off the edge. They said dreamers never die. So come and fly, come and fly, come and fly away with me. We're rising, we're
Hey
falling.
everyone, my name's Joel, and this is Airlines by 40. It's kind of a continuation to that intro video that I made. This is more of my backstory, how I got into aviation, and where I'm at, where I'm going with things. So sit back, relax, enjoy the story, and I'm sure those of you on a similar journey will have a lot to relate to on this. So growing up, I was always into airplanes, anything that could fly, whether it be a remote-controlled helicopter, a pull-cord toy that had a propeller on it, anything that flew or could move into the air, I was always into. And remote-controlled airplanes, I'm still into this day, as much as I hate to admit how dirty I am with it, but it's still something I'm into. It all started back in 2015 when I decided that I want to be a pilot for the rest of my life. 2015, for my birthday, my wife bought me a Discovery flight. We went over to Lewis University or K-Lot and met up with an instructor who had his own airplane. He had a Cherokee 180, I want to say it was. And my wife ended up going up in the back seat she went with. I was in the front seat, and he let me sit in the pilot side, the left side, and I had no idea how the controls or anything worked for a real airplane, other than that they had wings and a propeller and they took off. I had the general idea, from the remote controlled airplanes, the control surfaces and whatnot, but the actual inside and the avionics or the yoke, how that worked, no clue. So this is Captain Ron, by the way. If anybody else, small world, knows a Captain Ron that operated out of Lewis, cool guy. Anyways, we take off, and he says we're going to go on the Chicago Skyline tour. And again, keep in mind this is 2015, so air traffic it was busy, but it wasn't as busy as Midway and O'Hare and airspace is now. And we ended up paralleling the I-55 straight downtown. Got to go through Midway's airspace. It was great. I was so nervous to not touch the controls or break anything or crash the plane, but it was a great time. It was cool hearing the real life chatter on the radio, and we ended up flying down, did the Skyline tour, flew along the coastline, saw the buildings and whatnot, and turned around and came back. And I'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but my wife gets air sickness. So I don't know how she made it, but she made it all the way up to the point that we turned around. And the captain knew that I was having a lot of fun. And I look back in the back seat and I say, "Hey, honey, how are you?" She's white as ever, puking in a plastic bag, but she held it together the best she could despite all the puking. And then there's me just happy as can be the whole way. So we ended up landing. The whole flight was, I want to say, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, nothing crazy. And I knew that was it. My life changed pretty much forever. Now, in 2015, I was really just starting out my career in IT, so I wasn't ready to make the full-fledged jump, but I knew something had to change as far as my career, and I needed to fly one way or another, whether it be I bought my own plane or I figured it out how I'm going to make it to the airlines. And I honestly, I really wish that I would have started this jump before kids, before I was a little bit less established in what I'm doing now because it's harder to make that shift with having multiple kids, a house, and that's the whole goal of this channel is to kind of talk about that and to really encourage others that are looking to make this transition. So that being said, make the jump earlier if you can help yourself before you have kids, before you have a house. It just makes it harder. But anyways, fast forward 2019. 2019, before the pandemic hit fully, is when I really made the decision of I'm making the jump to fly the rest of my life some way or another. So used my GI Bill and enrolled at Lewis University. Go Flyers for anybody else that's attending or has went there. Lewis is absolutely a great school. Stupid expensive, but again, I was on the GI Bill, so I didn't care too much about the cost. There's a couple things I had to pay out of pocket for, but had I not had that, I never would have been able to afford to go there without a doubt. But the GI Bill took care of all of my flight training. So any of you veterans out there that has the GI Bill, you can most certainly use that for your aviation career if you want to. But yeah, ended up getting my license and made a lot of really good friends along the way. A couple flight instructors I still stay in contact with to this day. Marcus specifically, I'm sure you'll hear me talk about him in plenty other videos. Him and I still stay in contact all the time. He's at the regionals right now. working his way up to the big boy league. But yeah, still a cool guy. Definitely leverage him for a lot of stuff. But yeah, got my license in 2020. So I was one of the last students at Lewis University. It was March 2020, right when everybody started to flip remote. And they were shutting down. I was quite literally the last student, or one of the last students to get it before the full-on temporary shutdown. It was probably one of the easiest check rides I think I could have had. It started to rain that day, and it was the chief pilot of the school. He took me up, and I remember asking him, "Hey Dan, it's starting to rain. Are we good to fly?" And he's like, "What? You think airplanes can't fly in the rain?" So we ended up still taking off. We were technically marginal VFR, so we stayed under the clouds, and very easy check ride at that point. But I had a good relationship with him building up to that checkpoint or check ride, so it was pretty smooth. So I got my license March 2020. And then we ended up having our second kid in December of 2020. And leading up to that, I started working on my instrument rating once the school opened back up. I got about 17 hours under my belt as far as the instrument training goes. I ended up passing their like internal check ride. It was part one of it. The way Lewis does it is they do their internal check rides with their chief pilots before they actually have you go with the true DPE. And really, that's just to raise their passing ratio. So if you pass their internal one, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to pass with the actual DPE. So I passed stage one. And then we had our second kid. And once our second girl came, there was just no time to continue on training. And I hate to say that, but with the wife being out of work and needing extra help, I was working full time and also trying to attend Lewis full time. So little one came December 2020. Time went by, and I knew that I needed to get back up on that horse with training. And then of course, we had another wrench in the gear. 2021 June, our landlord at the time decided that he wanted to sell the house that we were living at, and that came as a shock. We weren't ready for it, weren't prepared to try and uproot, and we're a family of four plus a dog and a cat, and we're a full-fledged family. Trying to pack up, find a new place to go to, whether we buy or we rent. Either way, it was difficult, not gonna lie. So that caused my training to get a little bit more delayed. And I know the whole purpose of this is to not talk about excuses, but I'm just giving you real life examples of what can happen and how to overcome it. So we ended up finding a new place to move into. Really liked the place and got situated pretty quickly. So the cost of living was a little bit more at the new house, but it wasn't anything that we really couldn't overcome. We ended up budgeting a little bit differently, changing things. Unfortunately, I wasn't back at Lewis just because the needs of me being at home, me working full time, and also picking up some odd hours and shifts at my job. It really wasn't feasible to be a college student at the age of 32, 33. So, over at Bolingbrook Clow Airport, that's where my current hangar is, my current plane is at. This is before I owned the plane or the hangar. I was renting planes from JWA. Um, that's their FBO. It's the main flight school right next to Charlie's. Shameless plug, I'm not sponsored by them, but great company to work with. I'm sure it depends on who you ask, but I always had a really good experience. The owner is Wayne Brzezinski, super cool guy. Anyways, I ended up talking to him a little bit more, kind of getting to know him. And I started renting planes from them. I was going up about once every other month, maybe every month. Nothing crazy, but really just enough to kind of meet the needs of staying current and not getting too rusty. I could still land a plane. I didn't want to lose all that experience that I worked so hard to get. And yeah, so fast forward, I ended up needing my BFR that was coming up due. So um, June, July of 2023, I really started cramming in, studying as much as I possibly could. Just, you kind of lose touch with the knowledge aspect of it. Like it's like riding a bike. You can ride a bike, but you're not going to know exactly how to assemble the bike. That's kind of how I felt with flying. I know how to do everything. I knew how to be safe, knew how to not get in trouble, but the granular text questions that took a little bit to study back up on. But once I started studying, everything came back really, really quickly. So passed my BFR September 2023, and my little ones, they were starting to get a little bit older to the point where they knew that Daddy really liked airplanes, and Daddy always talked about airplanes and watched airplane movies, and they just kind of had a good understanding of the things that I liked with it. So my older one asked, Dad, can I go flying with you? Will you take me up as a passenger? And my little one also echoed that and wanted to go up with me. And that kind of worked out for my favor, in all honesty. My kids are really what sold my wife and me spending so much time and money on airplanes as much as I have been. So we ended up slotting a flight, a block. This was October 2023. And we packed all four of us into a Cessna 172, nothing fancy, steam gauges, and we ended up going up in the pattern for a loop. Now go back to 2015, that flight discovery that my wife got for me, and she ended up going on and getting super sick in the back seat. Yeah, nothing changed. She still gets air sickness. She gets motion sickness in cars. But now we had two little ones, so she had to kind of hold it together the best she possibly could as to not make my little ones think that everybody gets sick and mommy's dying in the front seat. Nope, she was good. She held it together. We did one revolution in the pattern, both the girls in the back seat, and they loved it. They were giggling, looking out the window, and had an absolute blast. But again, the wife got sick pretty quickly. Again, she held it together, didn't puke this time, so we landed right away. And the goal was to land and swap out my family for my dad. My dad's my flight partner, John. You'll see him. He's been in a couple of the YouTube shorts that I started making. But yeah, the goal was they would swap out, he would jump in, and him and I would go tool around for an hour or two and just log some flight time. Now with my dad, he's not a private pilot. He's just an aviation nerd enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. He's just a high-paying passenger partner at this point, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. So my littlest one, she looks over at my wife and I and just goes, "Daddy, can I keep flying with you and go with you and Grandpa?" And I was hesitant and I was going to say no. And then she got the watery tears and said it with the genuineness of her heart that she wanted to continue on and go flying with us. Um, that was a super pivotal moment for me and my wife. Again, it locked in the ability to meet for me to keep flying with the approval of the wife because the daughter was brought in. But also for me too. My daughter really enjoyed it and she still does to this day. My last trip to Gulf Shores, again in the YouTube short, that was her in the back seat, her on the beach with me. Um, yeah. So we continued on with that flight. We took off, her in the back seat, dad up in the front seat, John. And we took off and we just tooled around. We headed up towards Wisconsin, flew about 45 minutes up there and came back, just did some sightseeing. We didn't do any maneuvers or anything because it was her first time in the, well, second takeoff, but still her first day being in the airplane with me. So I wanted to make sure the flight was smooth. I did some turns so she could look out the window and see a little bit better from the back seat. But it was overall a great trip, and I'm so happy and proud of my little one for going with. And honestly, it also increased my dad's buy-in too. My dad was already very into airplanes, but he enjoyed having his grandkid in the back seat with him. And so we were probably about 20 minutes north of Klaus. We were just getting close, coming to an end on the flight. And I lean over and I look at my dad and I go, "Dad, we should buy an airplane." He looks back and goes, "Joel, I already talked to your mother. We're going to buy an airplane." I couldn't believe it. He predicted this conversation to a T, and everything just kind of clicked, and we both agreed we're going to buy an airplane.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup.
So now the story gets better. We ended up landing, seamless, eventful landing, eventful flight. And we landed. And like I said earlier, Wayne's a pretty cool guy. He saw us land. He came out of the FBO and greeted us and just asked how the flight went. Talked to my daughter, was excited to see her in there as well. And we looked over at Wayne and we said, "Hey, we decided we want to buy an airplane. You know anybody that's got an airplane for sale?" And he's like, "Well, I actually have an airplane for sale." And I kid you not, stars aligned to make this all work. And he's like, "Take a walk with me." So we walk over to the big hangar where they store all the airplanes. And there's a Piper 140 that's all torn apart. The cowling was off, but the body looked to be in great shape. Came within probably like a 6 out of 10, I'd say. Nothing fancy. It's older. You've seen it in my shorts if you've watched it. And over to the picture of the airplane here. Um, but yeah, it's vintage 1967. And so we looked at it and looked great. We liked it. But we were novices. We didn't know what we're looking for. We just know we wanted an airplane that was within our budget that could take us from point A to point B and I could build time in. And we asked him, "All right, how much do you want for it?" And he says, 40,000. And without even thinking, my dad and I go, "Yep." Done. We'll make it work. Now, keep in mind, I had no money in the bank, or not enough to buy an airplane out of the blue, and I don't think my dad did either. And we just knew we were going to make it work one way or another. And Wayne goes, "You sure you want to negotiate? You're good?" And we go, "How much time's on the engine and how much time's on the airframe?" And Wayne said about 3,400 on the airframe, and it was 850 on the engine since the last overhaul or major overhaul. And we go, "Okay, nope, no problem, nope, we'll take it." And we asked, like, why do you want to sell it? And he has a fleet, probably six or seven 172, somewhere around there. Honestly, I don't know the exact number. I just know we've got a whole bunch of 172s and 152s. And he told us it's the black sheep of all of his planes. It's the only one, it's only the only Cherokee Piper that he had. And to make this plane even more of a black sheep is it had a handbrake. Nobody wanted to use the plane with a handbrake. That's right. There's no toe actuators or anything. It is just a single handbrake. Kind of like the parking brake on a couple airplanes. It took a little while for me to get used to it, not gonna lie. But now it's weird. I can't imagine landing or stopping with my toes anymore. It's really convenient having one single lever. There's no directional steering, so that does kind of suck if you have to make a tight turn. Um, but honestly, like turning in this airplane is like turning an import car like a Honda Civic. That turn radius is amazing, just like how this plane is when it comes to turning on the ground. So no issues there. But yeah, so fast forward to today. We've got a handful of trips under our belt at this point. We've gone to Jack Edwards, or Gulf Shores, Alabama, like once a month, once every other month. We try to make it out there. One, I love the beach. I live in Illinois. It's cold. I hate the cold. And two, it's a good way to build some sweet time. Our last trip took us 12 and a half hours to get down there. I need to do a debrief video on that one. Partly because of weather, also taking my little one having to stop for the bathroom, also old man bladder having to stop. It's okay though. Yeah, so here we are, coming up on that 1 year anniversary of owning our plane. We ended up buying it in technically December of last year, so we're about a month out. We've got a lot of big plans as far as this airplane goes, purchasing another one, and ultimately getting to that airlines by the age of 40. And honestly, I want to take you all along with on that journey with me. It's definitely has not been a straight and narrow path. It has been winding and bumpy and curved roads, but you know what? I am damn determined to get down that path one way or another. So I hope these videos can encourage anybody else looking to do the same thing. Don't lose sight of that dream. Don't lose sight of that goal. Keep pushing forward. You'll eventually get there one way or another. So thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far through, subscribe, get those notifications. I'm going to keep making shorts just because I'm having fun doing it. But I'll try to get these long videos out at least maybe once every other week, once a week. I don't know. All YouTubers set that goal, but who knows? We'll see. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all at the next video. Thanks.